Good evening. I evaluated all of your foot and ankle case studies, and I wanted to provide a video response so that everybody could hear, and hopefully it will enhance your learning and assist you as you prepare the case studies for this week on the knee. With that being said, we had quite a few of the lateral ankle sprain case studies, and that was okay because you guys were getting the hang of it. But for the knee and the thigh, we're only going to have one case study per type of injury. So we'll have one MCL perhaps, or one ACL, one meniscus, one femur fracture, one adductor strain, but we're not going to have the same ones over and over. So in other words, first come, first serve. If you have a creative one that you want to pose, or a certain injury that you want to show for the knee or the thigh, then you need to pose that quickly because we're not going to have a lot of redundant ones, okay? So that's the first piece. The second piece is you're going to hear me say quite a bit in my responses to be very careful in prescribing anti-inflammatories or NSAIDs to minors because that's illegal. You can, with some discretion, suggest the use of those if you're dealing with college athletes or a family member or even for yourself. But again, you are not allowed to make that recommendation to high school or middle schoolers, so be very careful in that. Some of you were really free in prescribing NSAIDs. So with that, I'm going to go through all of the case studies using your names and give you some feedback, and I hope that this is a great way for you guys to enhance your learning. So Natanya and Brittany, thank you for starting us off. And Natanya, you developed a nice longitudinal arch strain case studies. And crutches would be appropriate if the athlete is limping. When in doubt, we give crutches just to make sure it does not increase the severity of the injury. So even if it's just a day or so. Ice massage and good support is also needed. So very good response, Brittany. You were thorough in that. For future responses, Natanya, it might be helpful for you to be a little bit more specific in your case study explanation, maybe identifying the anatomy that is injured and not simply stating that it's swollen. But both of you did a good job, and Brittany, I was surprised how you were able to respond appropriately with some of the case study descriptors. So good job to both of you, and thanks for getting us started in the class. Jack and Kimberly, you were next. Creative ankle sprain injury from surfing. And I appreciate that. Kimberly, you responded nicely to the case study. Considering the athlete experienced sharp pain that wasn't going away, you might consider referring the individual to the doctor for an x-ray, or at least fitting the athlete with crutches and referring him to his GP. Your initial treatment was also very accurate, so thank you. Jack, you needed to respond to Kimberly again, but you didn't do so. So make sure you do this in future case study designs and responses. So Brian, you were the next one up, and you talked about swelling, but we want you to be a little bit more specific on where was the swelling located in the ankle. And Natanya, your response was textbook perfect, so thank you. Again, Brian, you needed to respond to Natanya as per the instructions, so make sure you do this in future study designs. Kimberly, I'm sorry that no one responded to your case study. It could be because they didn't carefully read the directions for the assignment, or it also could be that your case study was vague and complex. I was even having some difficulty following it. Was it an ankle or a foot injury? So in the future, please be more specific in the design with a specific injury in mind and specific signs and symptoms to address it. And then also make sure you pose a question. Some of you just gave a nice case study, but there was no question. So you want to make sure you pose a question for your respondee to address. Matthew and Brian, good case study development for an ankle sprain. Brian, gathering a history is also very important. Well done. However, I wouldn't suggest ibuprofen because you're working with a minor, and doing so is illegal, so be careful about that. Also, the athlete doesn't return to play just because he completed the treatment and rehab. He also has to pass strength and flexibility tests first to be sure the ankle is stable again. Matthew, the lace-up ankle brace by Sweeto would be a good brace for you to use in your scenario. So good work to both of you. David and Aiden, great case study, David. I appreciate you including the pain scale of 1 to 10. It's an excellent way of determining level of discomfort. You need to ask us a couple specific questions, though, for your responder. You just simply stated the facts and had Aiden guess the response. However, Aiden, you did a nice job of responding with possible injury and treatment. Considering the individual experienced previous ankle sprains, you might not need an x-ray unless, of course, there was a sensation of a pop or tear, or there was extensive pain, swelling, and disability. Most repeated ankle sprains are not as painful or as complex as initial ankle sprains, and that's because the first time the athlete sprains the ankle, everything is tight, and they are usually more disabling than repeated ones. For the most part, there's always an exception. Brittany Orlando, a good case study description, Brittany, but be careful about focusing first on treatment to return to play as soon as possible. This is a common request. We just want to get that athlete back. But what about treatment that will guarantee a long-term recovery with no complications? That's really what we're trying to focus on in sports medicine. Orlando, you can't confirm a grade 2 or 3 without an x-ray and physical exam. However, your treatment and rehab protocol were very accurate, so thank you to both of you. Josephine and Jack. Josephine, you developed a case study for the foot, but your description is so vague that I might have had difficulty responding to it as well. What do you mean by they complain of feeling sharp pains in their foot with each step of pressure they place on the foot? What are you referring to exactly in the arch, the ball of the foot, the heel? Also, what do you want your respondee to respond to? What question do you want him or her to answer? Jack, you did do a nice job of responding to Josephine's case study. And Josephine, you needed to reply back to Jack as per the instructions. Orlando and Jacob, good work on the case study and reply. Your description sounded like an eversion sprain, but you were not clear with it. Good job, Jacob, at picking it up and providing a solid response. Be careful about prescribing NSAIDs to minors. This is illegal. Okay, Aiden and Matthew, great case development for an ankle sprain. Very descriptive, Aiden. Matthew, you were wise to request an x-ray considering the athlete heard a pop. This is absolutely correct. So nice job to both of you. Charles and Elizabeth, nice case study design on yet another ankle sprain. Elizabeth, I appreciate you including the names of the 3 ligaments that are often sprained. Well done. Good work to both of you. Jacob and Aiden, creative case study of turf toe, Jacob. A nice change besides the lateral ankle sprain. Well done. Next time, be sure to ask questions so that your responder knows how to respond. And Aiden, your response was well written. Immersion in ice water is helpful for turf toe and also the use of stiff-soled shoes to prevent further injury. Don't encourage the use of anti-inflammatories if the individual is under 18 as it's illegal. Teresa and David, good design, Teresa, but be sure to ask a question for your responder to answer. And David, you probably would provide crutches since the athlete had a history of ankle sprains and had difficulty with movement. You can't prescribe an MRI, but you can refer the athlete to their doctor for evaluation, and the doctor would probably prescribe an x-ray first, and then if needed, an MRI. I realize that many medial ankle sprains have the complication of medial arch pain and flat feet. This is the complication of this injury. So thank you for your work. Nice job. Elizabeth and Melissa, nice development of your case study, Elizabeth. It was very descriptive. You're a good writer. Be sure to ask specific questions of your respondee. Melissa, stress fractures are chronic, not acute injuries. So although the individual may have experienced a fracture, it would not be considered a stress fracture, possibly a hairline. Your recommendation of rice and referral to the doctor was accurate. Again, don't prescribe ibuprofen to minors, but it is an appropriate recommendation. Melissa and Charles, last and definitely not least, nice case study design, Melissa. Be sure to pose a specific question for your respondee. Charles, bravo on the treatment plan and explanation of the gait theory to reduce the pain. Well done. Again, don't prescribe ibuprofen to minors. And Melissa, your response was accurate, but again, pose the question in your case study and not just in response. So for the first round class, not too bad. Some things I'm going to look for in the next round. First, a very specifically designed case study using appropriate anatomy. And again, 1 injury per person. We're not going to have the same one over and over, so post promptly. Remember, you post the case study, you allow a colleague to respond to it, and then you go back in turn to provide additional information or questions, okay? And then in turn, you also respond to another colleague. So make sure you follow this same format. Some of you are getting a little sloppy in your posting, and it looks like you're posting directly in the text box and not editing your work. So now that we've been in class for a couple weeks, I'm going to watch that carefully because you are graduate students. I recommend you to prepare your post first on a Word document so you can do a spell check, and then after that you can post it or paste it directly in the text box, okay? But for your first round of case study development, great job. You've got an article critique coming up. Make sure you refer to the sample that I provided you so that you can clearly see how to write up the critique. I know you've submitted your EAPs, so give me some time to download and grade those, and I'll get those to you just as soon as possible. And once I do so, you'll make the final edits and then upload your work to TaskStream. So nice job, everybody. I appreciate your prompt and thorough work. I trust you're enjoying the content of this 560 class. If you ever have any questions, I'm an email away. Okay? Have a good night.